Hi. In this video, I'm going to work on soldering up this temporary bus that I'm going to use for address bus 1. It is strip board, and soldering onto each of these copper strips, well, it proves to be more difficult than I anticipated. I figured it would be at least as easy as, if not easier than, soldering the surface mount onto the printed circuit boards. Boy, was I wrong. Let's get into it. Hi, my name is Adam. I'm building a 16-bit computer from scratch. I hope you'll join me on this journey. Okay, I have to make 6 buses for this computer. There's going to be 2 connections for each main bus, address bus 1, address bus 2, ALU-A, ALU-B, and then there's going to be a fetch bus associated with getting instructions out of memory and into the pipeline. I need to start putting some of that stuff together. I at least need address bus 1 and the fetch bus in order to get this computer operational. Now, the fetch bus doesn't necessarily need more than one connection. It can actually be a direct connection from the... No, I take that back. The fetch bus is going to need to have multiple connections. So I was wrong with that. So I'm going to need to start putting those together, and that's what the strip board is for. I've got some 19 or so strips across here, and these things are headers, sockets, so that I can plug pins into. And so if I stick them in here like this, and unfortunately I can't stick them right side by side, they don't fit. So if I was to try to go side by side, it's just a little bit too tight. So I have to leave a space in between, and I'm okay with that. But what I need to do is I need to get those soldered down. Now I'm actually working from the wrong side. So these would actually go from the other side up like this and like this. And I hope you can see the pins coming out there. And so what that does then is it allows me to plug things in on this side and solder it down on this side. So I need to get 6 of these started and start getting things hooked up, and that's what my task is going to be today, is to start getting this set up so that I can start putting some of the buses together. So I'm going to try to line these up in such a way that this will sit flat and the pins poke straight up, and then it should be just a matter of tack and then set it all in and then rinse and repeat. So over here I've got one, and it's just to hold the board level while I actually try to get these soldered up. Now, each of these strips is a lot of copper, so there's a lot of mass here to warm up. And the key is to do this without making any bridges. All right, so now the question is, are these electrically sound? And for that, I think I want my multimeter. Let's put it on continuity here. Okay, and I just need to check adjacent strips here. Okay, so at least there's no bridges. So I think what I'm going to do is try to solder 2 more up. And let's see if I can get those soldered in. Okay, those are nice and tight. Almost. Ha! But that one didn't take. That's brilliant, Adam. Would flux help? Not sure one way or the other. As I'm doing this, I'm getting the impression this is going to become more and more difficult the more dense I get this. Alright, well, it doesn't look fantastic. What can I use to test this? How about this? You know, I should be able to... No. I am not getting an electrical connection. Alright, I have problems to solve. Alright, let's get a look at this under the microscope. And that looks about what I was afraid of. Alright, let me see if I can get this angled right. So if you look at this, the solder went around the pin, but there's no solder actually on the pin. Now this is good, this is good, this I believe is good, this looks good. That's questionable. Probably not good. Actually, that's not good. That's not good. That's really the only one that looks good. So, yeah. The problem is quite simply that it's just not filling the hole. And even down here, I've got problems with the second set. So you can see it didn't quite fill the hole. And I believe the problem is that these are not through plated holes. These are just regular non-through plated on top of copper. And the good news is it still doesn't look like I have any bridges across any of these, so that's good. Which makes me wonder if flux would be the answer here. So let's try this. I'm gonna see if I can support this on this end. Let me turn my soldering iron back on. A little bit of flux, and let me see if I can dress this up a little bit. Let's start with this one. Trying to get it down in the holes here. Does not look like I'm actually making a good electrical connection yet. Okay, let's try this one here. Just does not flow down into those holes. Looks like I've got flux spitting out. Still does not look right. I think that side looks actually pretty good. Let's bring the tester back in and see what we can find out. So that looks good. Do I have any bridges? No bridges, so that's good. Let's try this one. Good, 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 and good. All right. So now I've got to clean up the other side. Okay, so this was the good side, and this is the yet to be improved side. And again, it's just a mess here. So I'm going to start with this top set. Actually, I should probably start with this bottom set. Yeah, let's see what I can get here. But now with the flux in there, hopefully. No, that doesn't take. That one took. Let's try this. Because I'm applying the flux to one side and the solder to another. Let's see if I can get it right down here in the middle here. So that I'm putting the flux and the solder on the same side of the pin. Let's see if I can improve my success here. I think that looks better too. All right, I'm gonna go to an electrical test again. It's a little warm. And let's try the next row. All right, and then let's walk the adjacent, no solder bridges. So I have now a bus for two registers. If I wanted to put a third one in, I could stick these in here and then solder those down as well. And that would give me enough for 3 registers or 3 connections. But yeah, that's fussy. Okay, now I did manage to solder on a third row of pin sockets. And it went relatively smoothly to get those soldered up reasonably well. And moving over to the microscope, you can see the connections actually turned out reasonably well. There's nothing that looks like it's not soldered well, except for that pin right there, which if you look at the back side of it, looks like it might have a bit of a gap there. Let me see if I can get that focused in just a little bit better. Yep, it's exactly what I'm seeing. Is I'm seeing a little bit of a gap behind here, but it does not. I do have a good electrical connection, so I will just touch that up with a little bit of extra solder. Let me get the soldering iron turned on, and we'll get that taken care of. While I'm waiting for that to warm up, let's make that official. This is for address bus 1, and so I will label it as such so that I don't get my lines confused. And so there we go, address bus 1. Now, earlier in the video, I mentioned that I needed a bus for the instruction fetch. And that's actually incorrect because the instruction fetch only happens from memory to the instruction register. There's only 2 points of interface. I don't specifically need a board for that. I can actually just drum up I can create a ribbon cable such as this for that, and that would qualify as the bus in that particular instance. And I can do that simply because there's only 2 points of connection. I also, while I mentioned last video, I wanted to. There were some problems here where I did not put these in the correct location, and I did try to solder these off or desolder these off camera. Let me put it under the microscope, and maybe you can see it a little bit better. I've got it upside down at this point. I did attempt to desolder these, and you can see that most of the solder is wicked away. But it is not broken free, and you can still see some solder down in here, and of course some little bits of cotton where I actually used isopropyl alcohol in order to try to clean up the flux. These I have not touched. I do have the same problem. For me to get this desoldered, I actually had to purchase some additional equipment and some additional supplies. And I promise I'll show you the failure and the actual successful desolder if I'm able to do that with that additional equipment. I needed some time in order to get those things to me. And now that they are here, I will work on getting that video produced as well. That should be the next released. All right. back to the microscope, and let's see if I can get some solder in there and shore that particular connection up. Okay, and the key to success here does appear to be to make sure that it is very warm. Now, like I said, I did do this off camera. One of the reasons I did choose to do this off camera was I figured it was going to be more struggle of the same, but this appeared to behave a lot better, this particular row. And so I will end up doing a do-over of this. The problem is I don't believe that I can adequately and accurately explain what I'm doing correctly, or wrong for that matter. So I do need to practice the technique before I can accurately explain it. So I apologize for not providing all of the video for that. But as you can tell, I've got still some practice that I need to do. But my address bus 1 is done. That'll then feed memory location, which the contents of memory will then hit the fetch, which will eventually end up hitting the fetch register. And those will be in upcoming videos. So next up is to fix the issues with this register. I do have the pin and socket headers that are mislocated. I do have some issues with the connectability of the ribbon cable, so I've got the supplies I need to fix that. I've got to update the PCB design in order to make sure that it's accurate. So there's some cleanup still that needs to happen here, and I want to get to that relatively quickly because I have not yet applied power to this register and done any testing with it yet to make sure that it's actually functioning properly. So if I have issues with that, I need to get to the bottom of those relatively quickly as well. And God forbid I need to order a new spin of the PCB in order to fix anything that's drastically wrong here. I still have a concern to solve related to mixing the CMOS and TTL chips. I have a plan for that. And then I've got 19 more of these to solder up, but I'm procrastinating to make sure that I actually have everything working properly first before I go down that path. Memory is going to be next. I have a program to create temporary read-only memory for fetching instructions. This would be equivalent to starting up a BIOS or the like. And I want to do a walkthrough of that code. I also need to create a temporary memory module on breadboard that we would then use in order to feed instructions into the pipeline. So that's going to be coming up shortly after the register is done. For the control module, I need to establish my assembler foundation. I have a basis from which to start, but there are some issues that need to be solved in order to make it work for this particular architecture. So I need to get into that as well. That's going to be programming work. And if you're still hanging with me at this point, I would love a comment to let me know if you want to see any of that program work actually as I do it, or just a walkthrough afterwards. I'm tending to lead towards the walkthrough afterwards rather than programming and videotaping that. I don't know that there's any value in watching me write code. So if you're of an opinion that's different than mine, please let me know in the comments. I need to define some of the assembly mnemonics that I'm going to use, things like move, add, etc., and the fetch register creation, which is going to be part of the control logic. I still need to add a line driver to the input test harness. These are lower priority things because at this point it's not actually slowing anything down that it's not there, so I want to make sure that I get that or keep it on the list so I don't forget about it. And then lastly, I have 4 more buses to create, temporary buses, so I will work on those. Of course, there's going to be a do-over of this video if I'm able to articulate a good technique for getting those soldered up. And then, of course, my clock and that's last, basically bottom of the priority list, simply because the clock is temporary and may not end up being turned into a PCB. Thank you. We'll see you soon.